All right. My name is Big Time. In case you're curious about the avatar, it's a millstone. And I bring this avatar because we're going to talk about, well, first, we're going to cover a story coming out of New Jersey. The ACLU sued the Department of Corrections in New Jersey. And now they're putting men in women's prisons. And those women are being abused, beaten, tortured, raped by women penis. Because that's one thing that whenever you talk to people on the left, the very first line of defense, like Destiny, is to gaslight you and say, "Oh, that's not happening. That's not happening." And I find it so strange that I'm actually not surprised that you'll defend the mentally deranged rapist. So, first story coming from Redux. I'm pretty sure the link's in the description. If not, just go to redux.info. Female inmate at New Jersey women's prison alleges brutal assault by a man who has a mental illness and is pretending he's a woman so he can have an easier time in prison. A woman incarcerated at New Jersey's Edna Mahan Correctional Facility for Women, EMCF, alleges she was battered by a male transfer after she repeatedly refused his sexual advances. Speaking with Redux, and is it a black woman? Who was the um, inmate Shakira Reed described how she was assaulted by Jermaine Gibson, who identifies, I don't care, after repeated instances of sexual harassment. The horrific incident is said to have taken place on April 17th when Gibson was witnessed repeatedly punching Reed in the head. According to witnesses of the attack who spoke exclusively to Redux, blood was, quote, everywhere, end quote. As a result of the injuries Reed sustained, she was removed from the correctional facility and taken to Hunterdon Medical Center, where she received medical care before being transferred to Edna Mahan's on-site hospital unit. Reed stated that she was being treated for a broken nose and that she had two black eyes that remained swollen for weeks after. Where are all the pro-blackity blacks? Where are all the pro-blacks? Your women are being attacked by white men in prison. Although I don't know if this is Jermaine or I don't know if this is Shakira. Reed explained that Gibson had been sexually harassing her for weeks leading up to the assault. In one instance, she says Gibson exposed himself to her. She walked past, so he still has his dick. Reed said she was immediately reported to prison officials, but no action was taken. Yeah, they're terrified. They're going to get sued by the ACLU. It's got so bad to the point where I didn't want to come out of my room, she said. I faked sick so I wouldn't have to go to work, so I wouldn't have to walk past him, so I wouldn't have to hear him make remarks about my body. I started wearing large clothing to cover my body because I was feeling so uncomfortable. Reed attributes the assault to her repeated refusal to accept Gibson's advances. I was attacked because I didn't want to have sex with him, Reed told Redux. But disturbingly, Reed found herself penalized for defending herself against her assailant. Of course, both Gibson and Reed. One second. Both Gibson and Reed were punished for the altercation and were handed 90 days in lockup, a holding cell that is isolated from other inmates. Reed was sent to lockup immediately upon her release from the hospital facility. Another female inmate. So I don't know if she was defending herself and they have a zero tolerance policy or if she's lying. I don't know. I'm just going by the story. Another female inmate who has repeatedly been placed within the same cell block unit as several of the male transfers spoke to Redux about the incident under the condition of anonymity. Pamela expressed her incredulity and outrage at the circumstances involving the men being held at EMCF. I lived on the wing with both of them. Gibson continuously harassed Reed and would often speak in his man voice because he thought it was funny when he was asked not to because it had made the women uncomfortable. During the days leading up to the actual incident, he kept egging her on. When it actually took place, I could hear it. I didn't see it, but it was so loud we heard them down the wing. And this took place in the rec room. We could hear Shakira yelling, "Stop hitting me." Pamela added that she felt the wave of transgender male transfers to the women's prison was obscene because most still have their dick, and many have criminal convictions for violence against women. I'll read in code. Most are still intact, so they have their dick. The recent events here are just unimaginable, and honestly, if I wasn't living them, I wouldn't even believe them. People need to know what this has been like for us because no one has ever come to ask us how we feel about them being here. This is misogyny within misogyny. All right. Yeah, you look like a dude. On December 19th, 2016, Gibson was arrested in connection with the theft of a Suzuki motorcycle that was taken from a location at Columbus Park. He was later apprehended while found driving the stolen vehicle. After his arrest, he was charged over a November 26th robbery, for which he is currently serving at a mandatory minimum term of 5 years. Officials say Gibson entered a deli on Burt Avenue and demanded cash from a female employee while threatening her with scissors. Okay, so armed robbery. And it's Jersey, so you have a duty to retreat because they're communists. Fearing for her life, she handed over less than $100 from the register. The employee told police Gibson was wearing a woman's wig, makeup, and carrying a purse at the time of the crime. Gibson is one of over 24 men who have been transferred into the women's correctional facility over the course of the past few years. A 2019 ACLU, another commie organization, lawsuit against the New Jersey Department of Corrections resulted in a settlement which required the state to allow men to self-identify into the Edna Mahan Correctional Facility for Women. One sec, let me check something. The lawsuit was launched on behalf of a transgender male inmate who sought transfer but had been denied. That inmate was anonymized and court records refer to only as Sonia Doe. Redux recently learned that Doe is in fact a man who was investigated by the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force for the attempted illicit sale of ammunition and pipe bombs. Daniel Smith uses the name "I'm not saying your name" and is a vocal participant in the adult diaper community, a fetish subculture which involves adults dressing up and role-playing as children during sex. I bet he's white. According to previous testimonies provided to Redux from women incarcerated at Edna Mahan, among the first men to be transferred to the prison after the ACLU was victorious in their lawsuit was a sadistic murderer who had boasted about drinking his victim's blood. Prairie Surf was handed a 50-year sentence in 2003 for the brutal rape and murder of a sex-trafficked woman from Ecuador. Surf, who I don't care what your fake name is now recorded as a female by the Department of Corrections, had been found wearing his victim's clothes and utilizing her identification with his photo superimposed over hers. Another male transferred to the facility made headlines last year after it was discovered that he had, this is Demi Minor, impregnated 2 women in the prison. According to sources at the prison, Demetrius had been trying to have sex with the female inmates from the moment he was transferred in. Wow, so how did a woman get 2 other women pregnant? Because he used his woman dick. Multiple women have provided testimony to Redux over the past year detailing how they experienced continuous sexual harassment by the male transfers to EMCF. Most recently, inmate Kokila Hiat penned an article clarifying her reasons for speaking out against the gender identity policy despite the dangers involved. Hyatt emphasized that women in prison are frequently victims of sexual abuse. According to a 2016 report from the Vera Institute of Justice, 86% of incarcerated women have a history of abuse, 77% have a history of intimate partner violence. This in turn contributes to high rates of PTSD, leading women's rights advocates to describe this phenomenon as a sexual abuse to prison pipeline. Speaking with Redux about the attack on Reed, Hyatt elaborated on what she felt was a backward situation enabled by the acceptance of men's demands. The whole gender issue makes it as though we've forgotten what we already know. We're having to relearn men and women are different and male bodies can be at risk to females. We only got in this backward situation because men's concerns were treated as legitimate and women's concerns were ignored. Well, I'm not going to hold any of the women in this prison accountable, but I will hold other women, particularly I will hold a lot of women accountable outside of the prison because you were too much of a pussy coward to tell men to go with mental disorders to go fuck themselves. And now your children, girls, are being attacked. Men are trying to take showers in YMCAs and gyms. Girls are being attacked by men in middle school and high school locker rooms. And all this because you're too afraid to be offensive. All because you're too afraid to tell Rachel Levine to go fuck himself. Women aren't fighting to be housed in male facilities. Virtually all civil suits filed about gender identity discrimination are men wanting access to women's services they feel entitled and society allows it. Yeah, pretty much. All right. The other story today we're going to cover is Linda Frickey. Another example of Black excellence. So for those who don't know, there's been a lot of stuff happening. I'm going to cover it a couple times. The main story I want to cover, it's been updated, is this one. This is the one I want to cover. So let's go back in time. This was a year ago. This woman should have been racist and she should have profiled. And before I go, we'll watch the story, but let me just present this real fast. New Orleans actually has a castle doctrine where you are allowed to defend yourself. You are actually allowed to defend yourself. I was reading Louisiana Castle Doctrine. Deadly force is legal when preventing immediate death or serious bodily harm in one's home, vehicle, or place of work. So, and I feel, what happened to this woman is terrible. And I'm sure she was taught guilt. And I'm sure she had to go to work meetings, or she was told, oh, the poor blacks and slavery and redlining, and they're all just misunderstood. And all of them is just an Omar Epps, and they're going to college to be a neurologist. And this is going to be their last carjacking. Well, unfortunately, it was the last day for you to be alive. So let's watch these 4 lovely children murder this innocent woman. 70 years.
Jury indictment and Mike McDaniel's.
Let's see if we get the video.
Tonight, 4 teenagers are officially charged with murder.
It's a major update in a case that shocked the city, and we have confirmed the teens arrested will be tried as adults. Now, they're accused of killing Linda Frickey. Investigators say they...
Yeah, in her 70s, still working a full-time job. So this woman, her taxes are paying for these 4 little regins to basically just fuck up society. Isn't it great when you have to live by the rules and you have to play by the rules, and the children of another society don't have to contribute anything to that society, and they can even kill you and they're still seen as the victim? Black privilege is the ability to break every rule in society and disobey every law in America and still be given the benefit of the doubt and still be seen as the victim. If you don't know the story, wait till you see what they did to this poor woman. Stop killing my people. My avatar today is what I wish would happen to these 4 kids after a trial, after a jury, after due process. Give them a trial, give them a lawyer. And then I wish they would give them the millstone.
Carjacked her and dragged her until she was dismembered and died.
The DA...
Yeah, you heard that right. She was still attached to the car by her seatbelt, and they drove off anyway because they don't give a fuck about white people. And they ripped her arm off, and she bled to death from blood loss and shock.
Just announced the grand jury indictment, and Mike McDaniel's joining us live with the details on it. Big news, Mike.
Yeah, indeed. And there is still a small memorial here in Mid-City, right on North Pierce for Linda Frickey, where this violent carjacking came to an end. The district attorney says considering how violent this crime was, charging these teenagers as juveniles was simply not enough. So as of today, all 4 of them are charged as adults with second-degree murder. So what that means is this: each of them now faces life in prison for their role in this crime, as opposed to the 4 or 5
That's not enough.
years they would have faced in the juvenile system. 73-year-old Linda Frickey was violently carjacked just more than a month ago in Mid-City. The teens are accused of forcing her out of her car, her SUV, and
So I'll find the original video, but essentially, I think it was 2 boys and 2 girls, or 1 boy and 3 girls. She's sitting in her car, and you actually see them fan out. They've done this before. You actually see one of the girls signal the enforcer to back away because a car comes. He beats her while she's in the car, maces her, drags her out of the car, beats her while she's on the ground. Now she's terrified, and she still has her seatbelt on, and that's why she can't get out of the car fast enough. When he yanks her out of the car, the other 3 are in the car watching him beat her, and then they drive off. I bet they didn't say anything. I bet they filmed it, and I bet they thought it was fucking hilarious.
teens are accused of forcing her out of her car, her SUV, and then
So there's the mace. There he is trying to yank her out.
stealing it, dragging her for just more than a block as she was tangled in the seatbelt outside of it. She only broke free when her arm was severed from her body. Neighbors who saw it happen tried to stop it and rushed to her side as she lay dying on the side of the street right here where we are. The district attorney and family members of Frickey say this is the type of prosecution they wanted in this case.
No action of this office or any other agency can fill that hole in the hearts of these family members. But what we can do is assure and ensure justice and accountability for Mrs. Frickey's horrible murder.
I mean, this is what we wanted. We wanted them to
And just imagine if this wasn't caught on tape. Nobody would have heard about it. Nobody would even know her name.
be tried as adults because as juveniles, you know, the sentence would end at 21. And for what the heinous crime they did, they knew they were doing right from wrong, and they chose wrong. They need to be tried as adults.
So here are their names: Markel, Bernia, Lenra, John. So let's go back. I want to see if I can find the full video. Yeah, so essentially, I guess they weren't in school.
On the rise in cities across America.
Three teens stroll down a street.
Yeah, so you see them fan out. She's in this car. I don't know what she's doing.
They're casing a car, and what they do next is utterly horrific. Watch as they circle back. This time, 2 teens yank open the doors of the silver Nissan. The driver is still at the wheel. She's a 73-year-old lady, Linda Frickey, a grandmother of 4. She's leaving her job at an insurance company in New Orleans when she was carjacked. This part of the attack will shock you. After spraying a can of mace into the victim's face, the teen suspect appears to stomp and punch the grandma, while his 3 female...
I wish she would have blown you the fuck away. A 70-year-old woman probably has an issue with high recoil. There are decent 380 or 32. You can get hard cast wad cutters for a 32 or hard cast 380 rounds. I wish she would have blown him the fuck away.
accomplice.
And these girls just watch her do it, and they don't do a fucking thing. They probably thought it was fucking hilarious.
Jump into the car. Seconds later, but the driver takes inside. What happens next?
Yep, and there she still is, attached to the car. I can't even say what I want to say. So the only thing I'm going to say is what my avatar shows, which is a millstone. I don't want prison. I want a millstone for what they did. They look at that. She's still attached to the seatbelt, and they just drive off. And people act like they can't figure out prejudice. They can't understand why they watch your kids when they come in the store. They can't understand why people clutch their purse. You can't understand why people cross the street. Even black people leave Blackistan. Now you have the divested movement. They don't want to be, your women don't want to be around the men.
Next is just too disturbing to show. Police say the grandma was tangled in her seatbelt as the teen sped off, and Linda was dragged for an entire block. Her arm was actually severed. She died at the scene. Jenny Lynn Griffin is Linda's heartbroken sister.
For them to brutally start beating on her, mace her, pull her out the car, just could not believe that Linda.
And I bet these women would tell her she never needed a gun. She didn't need to defend herself. That'll never happen. You don't need that. I mean, you live in New Orleans. You live in one of the most dangerous cities in the entire country. I bet these women told her, oh, she's safe. That'll never happen to you. You don't need anything. What do you need a gun for? Oh, the guns are just for men with little dicks. That's what I hear women who tell me. And then I asked them, well, my wife carries. Oh, well, that's different. She's a woman. I said, oh, okay. Okay. I said, if someone attacks me with a gun, I have to use my hands because that's what a real man would do. But if a man attacks a woman with a gun, she can shoot him, right? In self-defense. Make it make sense.
Was murdered.
Sister-in-law Kathy Richard is reeling.
It's just so deliberate, cruel.
What did this woman do? And this is something that I don't get about black people. Like the fact that you could attack a 70-year-old woman. This might have been the first time they ever met her. To quote Ock Nation News, they didn't know her from a can of paint. And to just beat her like that and murder her. They don't care. They're demons. They're monsters. They're evil. Not just the fact that the boy could do that to her and murder her, beat an old woman for, I don't know. All you had to do is drag her out of the car. But the other fact that the three other girls probably, I bet $1,000 they thought it was fucking hilarious. The fact that they could sit there and watch it happen. I'd be surprised in court if it comes out, if they said anything to him. Hey, man, what are you doing? Hey, stop. I bet none of that was said. I don't know that. That's me speculating. But from what I've seen in Philly, I've never seen black people step forward to stop the fight. Unless it's the police. If the police are fighting somebody, black people got no problem stepping forward to stop them, especially if they're white. But if it's just a fight happening, everybody just seems to just let it happen and cheer it on. Because they love violence. We'll keep going.
She died at the scene. Jenny Lynn Griffin is Linda's heartbroken sister, this woman who was so dearly loved. I can't even imagine watching the video when you...
I also hate all the fucking news. I mean, it's New Orleans. Black people are destroying New Orleans, and these fucking newscasters act like they don't understand. It's not like there are carjackings happening in our city every day. And then this happened a couple months ago where one of the teens was found not competent. And this is the part I really want to lean into, and I'm going to cover this more in the future. So not competent, meaning low IQ.
Most people have no clue.
See, because I'm curious about that. So apparently we do have IQ tests.
Story, one of the 4 teenagers charged in the deadly carjacking of this woman, Linda Frickey, will not be tried just yet.
A judge deemed her not competent to stand trial. She ordered the teenager be taken to a...
And this happens all the time. The black kid who kidnapped Cash Gernon out of his own home and stabbed him to death was found not competent. This happens all the time in D.C. A judge will say no papers and the case gets thrown out. I don't fucking understand this. Who cares if she was intelligent enough? She stood there and did nothing and watched it happen.
mental health facility. Eleanor Tabone talked to legal experts.
Oh, mental health. Yeah, I watched my friend beat a woman to death and rip her arm off with a car. I'm the victim. Go fuck yourself.
Find out what this means.
Of the 4 defendants, 16-year-old Linda Theophile has been deemed.
I want to see their pictures. Stop protecting them. God, whenever it's a white person, they get fired from their job, they get doxxed, their husband gets doxxed, their children gets doxxed. But these poor children, these little astronauts, the little babies from the community, we still can't show their face. We got you on camera, motherfucker. And they still protect you.
Incompetent to stand trial and will spend 60 days in a mental health facility. Loyola University legal expert Dane Cialino says being deemed incompetent means Theophile, at this point in time, cannot help her attorneys with the fact-finding process and assist with her defense.
I would expect that in all likelihood, after she goes to the state mental hospital and she is placed under the care of psychologists and psychiatrists, that her competency will be restored and she'll be returned to the court for trial.
Linda Frickey was killed nearly a year ago after she was carjacked and she was dragged from the car for a city block in mid-city. Her arm was severed during the incident. Now, the case is back in the spotlight. For one, Linda Theophile's competency. Attorney Ken Barnes says during Theophile's 60-day stint, she will receive treatment to restore her competency.
What will be done? She'll be given narcotics, drugs to assist with it, but also there'll be therapies that the doctors may.
It's a shame she couldn't get therapy before she watched her friend murder an innocent white woman. Don't you think her parents fucked up too? Well, she needed all this fucking help, and it took the murder of an innocent white woman for her to get the help. Man, your fucking community sucks at raising kids.
Our partners at NOLA.com reported that prosecutors argued Theophile did not suffer intellectual abilities, but instead refused to answer the psychiatrist's questions in an attempt to delay her trial. According to both...
Yeah, that's a sign of intelligence. In other words, let me translate. She knows she fucked up and she got caught. So now she's just trying to wiggle her way out of it.
Experts, after the 60 days, she will be reevaluated and will go through this process at trial again. Now, this could go on for months or years, and if she never gains competency, she could spend the rest of her life in hospital.
She could be committed involuntarily to a...
So you're telling me this whole time she's been alive, there's no record of her suffering from this mental incompetency, but all of a sudden when she commits a violent crime, oh my God, now there's no record or trace. This is the very first time anyone's ever heard of her just having this mental disorder. I want to pull up the video and show how they spread out and fan out. I don't know which one she is in the video, but the motherfucker who maced Linda in the face, a girl signaled him that a car was coming. So they were intelligent enough to work as a team. So that's all bullshit. But guess what? To me, it sounds like an IQ test. Oh, but guess what? She was found competent. So listen to this. You're not getting away with it, motherfucker. I hope they bury you under that fucking jail.
All 4 suspects accused of murdering Linda Frickey in a brutal carjacking have now been approved to stand trial.
Yeah, today the judge found one of them competent after she spent at least 60 days in a mental health facility. Alyssa Curtis is joining us live tonight with the latest on this high-profile case. And Alyssa, what does this all mean for the case?
Well, this decision now means Linda Theophile, can now participate and stand trial for the death of Linda Frickey instead of waiting until some more time until those doctors deem she is competent. She spent a few months in a mental health facility, and today 3 doctors all agreed she is now competent and now can participate. When that trial date does come next year, this likely means that all 4 defendants can stand trial together.
A weight has been lifted off Linda Frickey's family.
He knew right from wrong. They all knew right from wrong. They were old enough to know right from wrong, and they chose wrong.
Thursday, Lenira Theophile was found competent to stand trial for the brutal carjacking after 3 doctors all agreed. The minimum score to be deemed competent is 80%. Theophile first scored 56.6%.
Yeah, but in the other video we saw, that seems to be because she was just refusing to answer. So my take on it is she thought she could wiggle her way out of it. You're caught. You fucked up. The whole thing's on tape or video, whatever you want to call it, digital camera.
Months ago. May 8th, she scored 84%.
So this is my question. I'm going to look into this and I'm going to try to find this test. Is this not an IQ test? You know how pro-blacks and liberals and white liberals and Democrats always complain that IQ tests are culturally biased? And like black, I don't even know what that means, because I know Cubans and East Asians and Nigerian. I know people from other countries who English isn't even their first language, who can score A's on culturally biased tests. But I find it strange that people whose ancestors have been here for over 200 years or since slavery, number one, you talk like slavery ended yesterday. And number two, scored an 84 on a competency test. That's an IQ test. Right? So she's intelligent enough to stand trial. I am very, very interested in what the type of questions are on this test. So I just wanted to bring this to the attention of the channel, that all 4 of these pieces of shit can stand trial. And I'm going to follow this trial and I'm going to cover it. But again, I want to go the extra mile. I want to know what's on this test. She got an 84. What type of questions were on the test? What were they looking for? Again, they're saying be able to distinguish and determine right from wrong. So that means that she's just a cold-hearted motherfucker, right? She sat in a car and watched a guy she probably gushed for because he was hood, because he was a little street urchin. He was on demon time. Watching that white woman get maced and beat up and being a part of the carjacking, that probably gave her a thrill. She probably thought that was fun. And do you know, they just stole the car. It wasn't for money. It wasn't for a chop shop. They ditched the car a couple blocks away. They was doing it just to do it. They weren't trying to get bread for their family. They were doing it for fun. So this woman's dead because A, she didn't profile. B, she didn't shoot the motherfucker in castle doctrine in self-defense, which is legal in New Orleans. And you can chop this up any way you want for any pro-blacks that don't like my channel. New Orleans has castle doctrine in your car. She had every right to shoot him. She's a 70-year-old woman. She can't fight a 15-year-old boy. So she is intelligent enough to know she's just a cold-hearted piece of shit monster. That's all she is. Boy, I hope the I hope the Chinese in Philadelphia get their own school and they don't have to go to school with blacks like this. I hope they get their school so they can focus and make Philadelphia a better place while the black community just keeps destroying Philadelphia. Anyway, I'm going to try to find this test and see what kind of test it is and what kind of questions there are.
This now means Theophile can understand the nature of the proceedings and assist in her defense. Frickey's family now hoping this means one single trial.
When it's separate, they try to throw all the blame on one of the other ones. Yeah, let them all go at one time.
Thursday, Judge Kimya Holmes also objected to expert testimony the defense was trying to bring in. The expert would have been used to talk about child brain development. It's an argument Frickey's family is firmly against.
They keep coming back, oh, their brains aren't developed. Well, you could take a 5-year-old child and they'll tell you, you don't take things that don't belong to you and you don't hurt people.
Nah, that's white supremacy. Don't you know blacks are allowed to just fucking kill you and it is not their fault because their brains aren't developed? God damn. Anything they can do to just skirt responsibility.
Pretty simple concept.
Law professor Dane Ciolino says he's not certain why the defense thinks that testimony would be relevant in this case.
Typically, if a defendant is tried on a not guilty plea rather than on an insanity plea, then mental health testimony is excluded from evidence. So the defense's request to put on that sort of expert testimony is quite unusual.
After Thursday, the Frickey family is ready for the trial they hope will make a change.
Where these juveniles quit getting a slap on the wrist and let right back out to commit even worse crimes because there's no accountability.
Yeah, even Latoya the Destroyer, the mayor, has even said progressive DAs are a part of the problem of why their crime is so high. So anyway, that's all I got for today. We're going to be looking for a copy of that mental competency test. Again, I wish that woman had carried maybe something simple like a 380 or a 32. There are decent rounds for those calibers, even though they're a little small. There are decent rounds you can find that'll do decent damage. That's a shame. The situation where she had the legal right to carry and she didn't. I wish she did. We're going to follow that case. We'll keep track. We'll find the mental competency test. I want to see what kind of questions there are, and a millstone for all 4 of those fucking kids. Anyway, on Big Time, that's news to me.